David Byron.
Good evening. I'm David Byron, and thank you for inviting me tonight. I'm also running as a write-in candidate for the United States House of Representatives. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm an American. After nearly 32 years of serving our nation in a military uniform, I wish to put that experience to work by serving you as your next representative in Congress. And I look forward to answering your questions.
Mr. Byron, Donald Trump has called for differing versions of a ban on Muslims entering the United States. Should there be a religious test to enter America?
Actually, I think it's a pretty good idea because it's an entirely different culture over there. I've spent a lot of time in both Iraq and Afghanistan, and I've dealt with every different tribe and every different faction while helping to rebuild their governments. If they're already radicalized or heading down that path, when they come over here, then we really don't need them here. So if we can include that as part of the vetting process, and test to see if they're going to be able to fit into our society, because we want them to assimilate. We don't want to turn immigrants away. Our nation was built on immigration. But if they are unable to assimilate into our culture, then we need to have an avenue, a way to identify them and keep that from happening. We don't need them to bring the same troubles that they're experiencing there here. And we're seeing that, taking place across Europe right now. It's going to be a problem here when the refugees start settling in Fort Myers and St. Petersburg. It's going to be a big issue, and anything we can do to help identify the problem people before they get here will help.
Is just being Muslim a reason to keep someone out?
It's not just Muslim, but that culture is an entirely different culture than anywhere else in the world. It's not Muslim per se, it's the culture. An American Muslim isn't necessarily the same as a Syrian Muslim. The way they treat their people, the way they treat, it's more than just religion. And the extremists, are coming through based on their culture rather than the religion itself. So it's not necessarily a Muslim issue, it's a cultural issue.
Mr. Byron, the Pew Research Center estimates that unauthorized immigrants make up 5.1% of the U.S. labor force. Week News viewer Jim Barber says undocumented workers would never have a job in this country if they weren't hired by American business to begin with. Are you prepared to strictly enforce laws against businesses when they hired undocumented workers?
Absolutely. It's illegal to come into this country illegally, undocumented, however you want to put it, it's illegal. And employers should be penalized, and they should be criminally penalized, if necessary, for hiring, knowingly hiring an illegal immigrant. It's the same as harboring a criminal. So they should face consequences for hiring them. And if we do that, we have a ton of immigration laws here. We don't necessarily need more. We just need to enforce the ones we have. And if we have to put some teeth into them to allow them to be enforced, then we need to amend those laws to add that teeth. And we need to make sure that those businesses are following the rules just like everybody else.
How do you feel these businesses should be punished? Are we talking about large fines, jail time?
Well, and that would have to be discussed. And we'd have to come to a consensus on that, whether it is fine. Some of them, if the fine's not high enough, they make more money by continuing to pay the fine than hire Americans. So if you add a criminal element to it and put some jail time in there, then that gets people's attention.
Mr. Byron, what reforms do you propose to make it easier for someone to start a business?
Well, small businesses are the backbone of our country. They make the wheels turn in our nation. Small business administration is an area I'd like to see expanded. I don't want to get the federal government too involved because too many regulations and controls at the federal level tend to bog things down. And we get too much red tape, too much bureaucracy. I'd like to see it take hold more at the state and local levels. We can expand the small business loans to provide people the opportunity, but as far as the regulation and oversight, let that get back down to the business communities and the local governments.
What should we do about cleaning up the water from Lake Okeechobee, and why can't we just send it south?
Well, to address that specific second half of that question, well, we do need to send it south, but we can't just send it south. We're just redirecting the problem there. Because it's not just a Southwest Florida issue, it's a Southeast Florida issue, and it's a South Florida issue. The common word in all three of those is Florida. Florida, the state and local officials need to take the lead on this because it's our issue. The federal government does need to be involved, and we can involve the federal government because Army Corps of Engineers, who began the initial problem, and the effect that this whole issue has on the Everglades, which is a national park. So we have a reason to bring the federal government in. Otherwise, I wouldn't suggest that at all, and because we're going to have a hard time. We can all agree on this being a major issue, but we get up to D.C., and there's 430 some other guys, men and women, who really don't care what our water quality is like. And so it's a major issue trying to get anything passed. So in Florida, the state government, they need to take the lead on it. Now, I think there's a lot of issues. Mr. Rosano mentioned some things. It's not just one issue. It's not just big sugar or corporations. It's not just pesticides. It's not just fertilizer. The problem has been ignored, and half measures have been taking place over the past several decades and led us to where we are today.
So if there's 437 other people who don't care about this issue, then how will you help to make those other people care about this issue?
I'm real good at being a bull in a china shop. Okay, I actually have a reputation for that in the military, and I can get things done. I will stand on people's desks, literally, seriously, and I will not leave their office until I work out some kind of agreement. Say, hey, there are other states that they have their issues too, and so maybe we can compromise. So, you've got an issue that's being ignored. I'll sit down and I'll work with you. You work with me on this one.
What will your first priority be to fight Zika, and how will you accomplish that as one member of Congress?
Well, it has become a partisan issue, and the bill that Mr. Rooney referenced was looking towards approval, bipartisan level, up until the last minute when the Republican Party threw on a couple additional wording that addressed Planned Parenthood in Puerto Rico. And then the Democrats balked. I don't blame them. A major issue with a lot of legislation out there is, throwing on those add-ins that have absolutely nothing to do with the topic of the bill, and that's how things get killed, and we get stuck with this bipartisan or this partisan gridlock. We do need, if we can get that bill back to focusing on the Zika issue and the research and development and the funding to carry that out, then we can get it through. As an independent, I don't have to follow party lines, and I'll stand in the aisle and pull people from both sides and try and push it through. One person can make a difference. You just got to be loud enough.
Mr. Byron, Pete Field wants to know where you stand on amnesty for illegal aliens.
Well, I would look at amnesty outright, no. I would look at all of them if they've been productive members of society. Okay, we give them the option of entering the regular immigration process. Okay, go through the same process. I mean, they can stay, if they're already here, they can stay as long as they complete the regular immigration process. And if they've not been a productive member of society, if they have any criminal record, if they've been a drain on our public resources, then no, they got to go.
As a follow-up question on that, those who are undocumented and have record of crimes, how would you prosecute them?
Okay, number one, they're not undocumented, they're illegal. That's like calling a bank robber undocumented withdrawal. Okay? And I'm sorry, what was the rest of it? You kind of.
How would you prosecute them if they've committed crimes?
The same way we prosecute anybody else. And we have court systems, we have laws, we expect them to, they broke them when they got in here, and we can prosecute them the same way we prosecute any other lawbreaker.
Mr. Byron?
Well, first, let me thank you, Chris, and the rest of the panel for putting this on and the excellent questions. Thank the crowd here. Thank you for showing up and supporting. And I thank the people that are out there watching and listening to us, that are taking an active interest in the issues facing our nation and our Southwest Florida. Now, on November 8th, as he mentioned, your ballot's going to show two names for this position, the Democrat and one of the three Republicans. But you'll also have another option. Beneath those two names will be an empty space. And this is important. In that space, I ask you to write my name, David Byron. If you like, I'll spell it out for you afterwards. But why me? Okay, well, I have experience on that national level. I mentioned my 32 years of military service. The last 10 were at the Pentagon, dealing with national levels. And when I wasn't in the Pentagon, I was over in Iraq and Afghanistan helping them rebuild their governments. And the portions that I helped rebuild are actually still effective, working and doing the job that I trained them to do today, despite the state of the rest of their government. So I have experience in the key areas that the federal government should be focused on: national defense, smaller government, veteran affairs, foreign policy, foreign affairs, and immigration. I have experience in those issues. Now, beyond that, if you're tired of the partisan gridlock, if you're disgusted by the greed, corruption, and influence of special interests that are causing the two major parties to self-destruct, taking our nation down with them, then I'm your best option. As an independent, I won't take my orders from a party leadership that is solely focused on its own self-preservation at the expense of the American people. Because remember, it's we the people, not we the party. I ask you to send me to Washington. Thank you.